Here it comes! From the fabulous penthouse studios of News Talk 1070 KMTH, this is The Price is Right! This is The Price of Business! Author of the hugely influential Empowerment to the People, award-winning, nationally syndicated columnist, Kevin Price brings a fresh perspective to business news and the events that shape our lives. And now, here is the star of The Price of Business, Kevin Price.
Welcome, good evening. I am Kevin Price. Glad to talk to you tonight here on The Price of Business. On today's show, we got a lot to cover. Later on in the program, we're going to be talking to the one and only taxman, Bob Lozer. He's got some great information, keeping us on track for 2012. And Stephen Wright's going to come in with one segment with Bob Lozer. He, of course, is with Wright Technologies, and going to talk a little bit about the application of technologies out there in professional firms. And plus, we're going to talk a lot about what's going on in the political front. Starting right here in this first segment, we've got Brian Darling with us. He's with the Heritage Foundation, and he's a senior fellow for government studies. We're going to talk a little bit about the president's budget that's being described as dead on arrival. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I want to start off with a question I think a lot of listeners have, which is over the fact that the Senate hasn't produced a budget in over 3 years now, yet they've had their own president in the White House. How do you explain that?
Well, it's hard to explain. I think that the president keeps producing these very political documents, these very political budgets that don't have any chance of actually passing in Congress. And for whatever reason, Democrats in the Senate just don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to govern, and they refuse to bring these measures up. And the president's budget for this year is $3.8 trillion. It's a massive plan. He wants the Bush tax cuts to expire. Even if you build that into the system, they're still way out of whack. I mean, we have a president who's run over $1 trillion debts in his first 3 years. He's expected to do again this year, and that's a staggering amount of debt. No other president's ever had 1 year of $1 trillion debts, let alone 3 in a row.
Okay, so his budget is $3.5 trillion, right?
3.8.
$3.8 trillion. What was the last Bush budget? I'm just curious.
I believe it was about 2.6. I'm not
right.
sure.
Which, of course, is outrageous as well. But,
yeah.
We're getting more. Just to make the listener mindful, we didn't even have a debt of $1 trillion until sometime in the mid-1980s. And now you see what they're doing on an annual basis. It's shocking.
Yeah, it really is shocking. It's amazing, and the amount of debt that's being piled on future generations is just basically generational theft, and that's what Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma calls it. He's spot on. I mean, we are living a better life now than our kids will, and it's the opposite of what happened with our parents. Our parents, many people are first-generation Americans, second-generation Americans whose parents came here with a couple bucks in their pocket trying to get their kids a better life, and now we're in a situation where we are living better than our kids will live because we're stealing so much from future generations.
Wow.
All you need to do is look to Greece to see what our future may look like.
Yeah, that's a very sad indictment. And, frankly, it speaks volumes about the problems of mob rule, which I think pretty much is in charge these days.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, you have a situation in Washington where these guys, they just won't take responsibility for any of the real problems we're facing. We're facing a huge debt crisis, and it's driven primarily by entitlement programs. The big three are Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, but we have a fourth one, and that's food stamps, and that program is growing exponentially every year. So instead of cutting spending, these guys keep increasing spending and increasing the burden of entitlements, and you just can't do that and balance the budget.
Okay, so the United States is now, I guess, just a couple of months away from having the worst taxes or highest taxes of any industrialized country in the world. I believe in April that begins to kick in, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, the administration is now saying we need to reduce taxes. Even Timothy Geithner has been advocating this for a while to make them more competitive. They won't use that word, but that's exactly why they want to do it by world standards. But what they want to do in the process is eliminate loopholes eliminate those opportunities for people to lower their taxes that exist in the law. In the end, aren't the taxes still going to be among the highest of any industrialization in the world if they are able to do that?
Yeah, there's an analyst at the American Enterprise Institute that estimates that this Obama tax plan it'll appear to lower taxes because it'll lower the tax rate, the upper tax rate, to 28%. But the bottom line is it's actually going to increase taxes on the American people, increase the taxes on corporate America, and that's exactly the wrong thing to do when you're already having some economic troubles. The way that this tax plan is structured, it's going to force companies that have overseas enterprises to pay taxes here domestically, meaning many of them will be hit with double taxation. There's going to be a minimum taxation that many companies are going to be forced to pay. It's a big mess. So he's going to pitch it as tax simplification and a tax cut when the bottom line is going to be a tax increase, and it's going to be very harmful for America.
Brian Darling is his name. He's with the Heritage Foundation. You can learn more about Heritage at heritage.org. You were talking about that double taxation. In fact, wasn't Vladimir Putin making fun of the United States over the fact that they were actually entertaining doing that?
Yeah. It is funny when we have countries that are clearly not very free countries making fun of us because we're going in the wrong direction. Most of the world's going in a better direction. You look at
a flatter world, if you will.
That's right. I mean, you look at the tax structures of many of the former members of the Soviet Union. They've gone to a flat tax, and it's worked out very well for them. And the countries that continue to have massive welfare states and continue not to pay for the welfare state and overtax their populace, like Greece, they're the countries that are doing poorly. So we need to go in the right direction, reduce our corporate tax rate. But the American people shouldn't be fooled by the president's plan. It's not going to reduce taxes. It's going to increase taxes.
Brian, I'd like to, with the minute or so we have left, I'd like you to kind of wrap up with your thoughts, kind of a takeaway for my audience. What should they be looking out for?
They should be holding onto their wallet very tightly because most of the time when the president's lips move, he's going to be asking for more money from the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they should be holding their members of Congress accountable. I think the biggest problem we have as a nation is that everyone hates Congress, but they like their own congressmen. And the reason why is because of the things they bring back home. It's going to require a shared sacrifice.
Yeah, that's the truth. And you look at members of Congress, they've done a poor job from top to bottom. There are a handful of good members out there, but for the most part, Congress has fallen down flat in their face. And it seems like both the administration and Congress just refuse to take responsibility, refuse to make difficult decisions, and that's causing a big problem for our democracy.
Yeah, Brian Darling is his name. Heritage Foundation is his organization, heritage.org. You can learn more about it. I had Taxman Bob here in the studio. Yeah, Bob Lozer, he was listening as well. I'm going to get his thoughts on your comments when we come back. Thanks so much for being with us today, Brian.
Hey, thank you.
All right, we're going to have much, much more for you right here on The Price of Business.
We want you to know that the old methods to get new clients do not work. According to recent studies, business owners are spending more time than ever building their businesses, and they have less interest than ever when it comes to dealing with salespeople. So how do you get their attention in this tough economy? A new free report details a program used to profoundly open doors. It's been used on CEOs of Fortune 500 companies,